On the Couch with Koel.
I really hadn't read a book till I'd read Midnight's Children. Salman Rushdie changed the way I read books. This wizard of modern literature has defied death threats, won the Booker of Booker, been knighted, and at last count was married 4 times. Perhaps the young, hot women he's seldom without are enchanted by the very same magic he weaves in his books. Sir Salman Rushdie, thank you very much for coming on the couch with me today.
Thank you. Nice couch.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. I'm going to quote a little paragraph that I have always loved from Moore's Last Sigh. Goes, I watched Epiphania praying and gave thanks that somehow, by some great fluke that seemed at the time the most ordinary thing in the world, my parents had been cured of religion. Where is their medicine? Their priest poison beating anti-venin. Bottle it for pity's sake and send it around the world. Do you wish that we could rid the world of religion?
Well, I mean, I tend not to wish for impossible things, you know, but I mean, if there was a way of waving a wand, then I think we'd be better off without it, yes. I mean, I think it's been responsible for so much of so many of the worst things that have happened in human history. I mean, I'm not even talking about now, but, you know, you go back to inquisitions and persecutions of various kinds. I think we could easily do without it.
And yet you briefly embraced Islam.
No, but that was, you know, first of all, I've repeatedly said that this was a mistake under enormous pressure.
Pressure from whom?
Well, everybody from the British government downwards. But I mean, it wasn't right. You know, I'm not a religious person, and I very rapidly unsaid it. This was 20 years ago, so give me a break.
Do you believe in a higher power?
No, no. I mean, I think I'm quite content with the powers that are down here. They're troublesome enough.
So where does all this sense of magic come from then? Because you certainly have it in your books.
Well, you know, I love story, you know, and I think all of us as children, you know, one of the first things we want when we come into the world is story, and the stories we want are wonderful tales. You know, we all want those extraordinary stories. We don't just want stories about going to work and doing a job. We want stories about witches and queens and curses and so on and so on. And I think that's something we grow out of, you know, but many of us, but I think maybe it's a mistake to grow out of it.
All the Midnight's children, and you're a Midnight's child.
Almost.
Almost. All the Midnight's children have special superpowers. If you could, do you have any, by the way?
I'm not able to reveal my secret identity at this point.
Are you wearing that? Oh, okay, very soon. Ooh, fly on.
Yeah.
But if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm quite happy with. I think just being a better writer might be good. You know? And so that would be.
Oh, so then what would you win? The Booker of the Bookers of the Bookers, or?
Okay. Well, no. I think something else, perhaps.
Another character in one of your books, Maurice, discovers he's a born storyteller. Telling stories gives him an erection. Are you aroused by your own storytelling skills?
No, I mean, I think sometimes I laugh. It's true. I mean, there's occasions when you think that it's really funny, and that's always, I mean, not often enough, frankly, but sometimes, yeah. I once made myself cry, which was kind of ridiculous. When I was writing Shalimar the Clown, there's a passage in there where one of the girl's father dies in a fruit orchard, you know, and I mean, he actually dies peacefully, not violently, and so on, but I'd become very fond of him, you know, and I was writing this passage and I found myself crying, and I thought, this is idiotic, I'm just making this up, you know? But it did, that's the only time sometimes laughter and tears, but mostly you're just sweating it out.
And a lot of sex in your books.
Only recently. Only
oh,
recently,
not recently. I mean, you've got Akbar having sex with an apparition. You've got Salim Sinai obsessed with this because he can't.
Yes, that's true.
Maurice almost having a curse with his 12-inch weapon.
Yes. Well, I think.
Is it because you're having too much or too little?
I don't know. I think that's for you to judge, really.
No, how is it for me to judge? I know nothing about you.
It's in most of my books, the sex was either kind of off stage, or it was comic. You know, that's just one or the other. And I think it's very difficult to write about sexual encounters non-comically without being kind of ridiculous or unintentionally funny.
Well, one of the other things in your personal life is that you like getting married. You really believe in the institution of marriage. but for some strange reason, the institution doesn't believe in you. Why have things not worked out? I mean, you really do understand love and romance, at least from your writing.
I don't know that they haven't worked out, you know, and I had 2 very long relationships with the mothers of my children, and both of whom, I mean, whether we're married or not, you know, I mean, my first wife sadly passed away because, you know, she had breast cancer, but we were very close friends until the day she died. In fact, when she died, I was the person sitting next to her bed holding her hand, you know, so, I mean, a marriage might end, but the friendship doesn't. And now, I mean, my younger son's mother, I mean, we may not be married, but she's actually the person I talk to more than anyone else. I mean, I talk to her every day, you know, and we're very close. So
you think that if Clarissa hadn't passed away, that you would have still been married to her?
I mean, you know, it's a long time ago.
Right?
It's a long time ago. But you know, as I say, we remained very close, and same is true of my younger son's mother, Elizabeth, and there were a couple of other marriages.
I've never heard anyone say a couple of other marriages. Now, of course, I tweeted about this interview.
Oh, did you?
I did, and one of the predominant questions, as you can imagine, was that what is it? Is it your brain, fame, money, mojo, sympathy, some people said, or do you have a secret weapon that you managed to get such hot chicks half your age?
Yes, I put a certain potion into people's drinks. And then it's easy.
Well, we're going to find out the recipe of that and market it later. And I have a few photographs here. I'd love to tell me what's happening and what are the thoughts and what's going on in the photos, just very briefly.
Right. Oh, well, that's when we just got married. That's when we were on honeymoon at the Cannes Film Festival. That's where that is. That's actually quite soon after the fatwa. I think that's a photographer took a photograph through a car window. So, as you can see, we're not in a good mood.
And who's the lady?
That's Marianne Wiggins, who was
okay.
who was my second wife, very briefly. Bad mistake.
That's one of the other marriages that you.
Bad mistake. Well, that's just a montage, isn't it? I mean, the picture on the left is Padma and myself at a party in England, I think, and the picture on the right is my friend Olivia Wilde, who's a movie actress. Oh, well, yeah, she's a writer who I took to a literary event, Min Lieskovsky, half Chinese.
You're always surrounded by beautiful women. I mean, this is
wrong with that.
That's Anne Dexter Jones.
Yes, it is. That's election night. That was a very big party that the film producer Harvey Weinstein gave in New York for us all to go and watch the election results. And
you do like hobnobbing with...
That's the happy moment.
That is a happy moment.
Well, that's the election result.
And...
Oh, Nigella Lawson, but I mean, these are my old friends. Yeah,
and you like dancing?
I wish I hadn't done that.
And this is... Are you still with her?
No.
Was this just a brief...
Yes, just a brief little thing.
Okay, now moving on to a few other photos, which I'd like you to tell me
what
was going on there and what were your thoughts at that moment. Now, this is quite a famous...
well, I wasn't there.
No, obviously not. Let's hope not.
No, I mean, these were terrifying moments, you know, because as you can see, it's a very ugly image. And to see that, that kind of image as a representation of yourself is, first of all, it's horrifying, and secondly, it makes you very angry, which is what it did.
And this, of course, is the root of it all.
No, it's not the root of it all. The root of it all is bigoted religion.
Yes.
That's literature is not the thing that mobilizes mobs. You know, it's bigotry that does that.
So you'd never take back satanic verses. You did briefly, but that again was just...
I never took it back. It was never withdrawn.
You disowned it for... You said it's... I would...
No, not true. Never disowned it. The book was kept in print throughout.
Let's talk about this moment.
Getting the gong, yeah.
What does it mean to be knighted? We were talking about this earlier.
You know, it's just what they do in England as a way of recognizing a lifetime of work. You know, I mean, other countries have other kinds of awards. The British give you this, and I mean, it just means that somebody has thought that whatever it is, 30 odd years of writing, is worth a moment of recognition, and that's all it is. So
apart from shaking hands with the Queen and getting that lovely medal, what else do you get being a Sir?
Nothing, zero. You get the title. You know,
which you don't even want to use. You told me, don't call me Sir, call me Salman. So
no, I think, you know, it's fine. As I say, it's a nice moment, and I'm proud of the recognition. But you know, you don't use it in daily life. I mean, that's silly. That would be like dressing up in a suit of armor and walking around.
But we don't want that. We still have Sir Salman Rushdie, although he'd prefer to be called Salman, on the couch. Come back after this short break.
On the Couch with Koel. On the Couch with Koel.
Welcome back. We're on the couch with Sir Salman Rushdie, one of my favorite writers. Now, the wording of Khomeini's fatwa asked for your head without mincing any words. What did you miss most when you went into hiding?
You know, one of the things I've never liked is the term hiding, because one of the things anybody knows about maximum security is that it's incredibly visible. You know? I mean, it's actually the opposite of hiding. It's like having a neon sign in the sky.
Saying I'm here.
Saying here, you know, so no, the thing that's hardest is the loss. Well, first of all, it's hard because it's worrying and so on, but it's also the loss of spontaneity. You know, you can't do anything because you just feel like it at that time. If you want to go for a walk in the park, it's not that you can't go for a walk.
Oh, you could do all those things.
But you have to tell people 2 hours in advance. You know, and by the time it comes round, you don't want to go for a walk anymore. You know, so it's. I think the difficulty is, first of all, the loss of privacy, because there's, you know, somebody in your kitchen, you know, and the other is the loss of spontaneity, that you can't do things just on the spur of the moment.
What about fear?
The thing about fear is that fear is a tyrant. You know, and if you give in to it, that's all you can do. You be afraid. You know, you sit in a corner and shake. And so the alternative is to put it in a box and put it in the corner and get on with your day.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's the only way you can function. You know, I'm not the first writer who was attacked. You know, it's happened to many writers, and many writers have responded, you know, nobly to very. I mean, you know, Dostoevsky faced a firing squad. You know, and I didn't.
Well, almost.
And no, but I wasn't actually standing there with people with a line of rifles facing
but
me.
But a lot of people close to you, you did lose some people
there were
who were
people,
very
no,
close
there was
to you.
obviously a terrible time. But what I'm saying is that writers have been able to overcome many problems, you know, historically, and I just thought I took some inspiration from that, I suppose. The thing that was more important to me was learning how to fight back. You know, you have to, in the end, you have to start learning how to argue your case.
Well, taking on from that, now I actually believe this, that we are becoming a nation of cowards, that people are just not going that extra mile to stand up to fanaticism, and these days fanaticism comes from Hindu quarter, from the Muslim quarter, from the Christian, from everywhere in India. What do you have to say about that?
I think we're not just a nation of cowards. I think it's an international phenomenon. You know, I think it's not only India that's behaving like this. You know, I think there's a global cowardice in the face of fanaticism and bigotry and violence. You know, and that cowardice often masks itself under what seem like respectable points of view, such as respect. You know, and when people say that you have to respect other people, what they mean is that they're scared of them. Nowadays, it seems as if respect has been reinterpreted to mean just agree with me or else. You know, and I say, yes, it's true it happens here, but it by no means only happens here. You know, it's happening in England, it's happening in the United States, it's happening, you know, wherever you look.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, did you feel abandoned by India at any point?
Depends what you mean by India. I mean, there was a period of almost a decade, 9 years, I think, when I was not able to visit here, and that was very difficult for me. But
I mean, just that India didn't stand up for you.
Well, of the official India, yeah, maybe.
Yes.
But I mean, you know, I'm much more interested in unofficial India. You know.
And do you still have a strong connect with it?
Yeah.
Because your books certainly do.
No, I do. I mean, I think I still have, you know, a lot of friends here, and I still have a great desire to be a part of this culture and this tradition and this narrative, if you like, you know. And so yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I'm an Indian boy who ended up somewhere else.
Now we're going to play a little game.
Couch confession.
Would you like company 20 years younger or 10 years older?
Depends if it's male or female.
And?
If it's male, probably 10 years older.
What is the biggest delusion of grandeur that you've ever encountered?
Oh, Well, you know, people are incredibly vain with very little reason for being vain, very often. And in fact, I've found that the greatest and most gifted people that I've ever met have been the most modest and the most self-deprecating. And it's the people with little talent who believe that they are, you know, gods.
Who's the most startling mind you've ever met?
Oh, I don't know, you know, I'm almost tempted to say Margaret Thatcher. I mean, not somebody that I particularly agreed with politically, but she is very, very smart. And you had to be really on your game, otherwise she would make mincemeat out of you.
What is the most arrogant thing you've ever done?
I don't do anything arrogant. What do I do that's arrogant? Nothing.
I'm asking you.
No, I have no idea. You must ask other people. There's plenty of other people who'll tell you that.
What is your greatest fear?
Oh, you know, oblivion. I mean, the thing is, if you write the kind of books that I write, they're books intended for the long term. You know, I mean, like Pulp Fiction is there for the moment, you know, and to give a momentary pleasure. But this kind of work, it hopes to stick around, you know, and you want the books to be there long after you are, you know, and I think that it would be very sad to feel that they didn't last.
What are your dreams made of?
My dreams are so boring. You know, it's as if I use up all this imaginative material in my working life. So my dreams are, you know, I sit in a chair and read the newspaper.
That's your dream. What are your nightmares made of?
No, they're the same thing.
London, New York, Paris, or Bombay?
Oh.
And I did say Bombay, not Mumbai.
Yeah, well, not Paris. I mean, I have deep connections to the other three cities, you know, and they all have different senses of home for me, you know, and I think the place that you are born and that you're a child is one particular kind of home, you know, and for me that's always going to be Bombay. And London and New York are, you know, equal. If I mean, I don't know, right now I like living in New York, you know, but that's right now. Ask me tomorrow, we might get a different answer.
What is your current state of mind?
It's good. It's good. You know, I mean, I'm always good when I'm working. I think many of us who do this weird thing, writing, you know, you don't feel completely yourself when you don't have a book to write. You know, and I always feel that once I've got a project and I know what I'm doing, it's like the whole of life falls into shape around it.
So you don't feel yourself till you're putting life into someone else?
No, I mean,
into other characters?
No, well, it's my imaginative world, you know. It's just nice to have an imaginative world that's alive in your head and that you're dealing with.
What would you instantly fall in love with?
Instantly fall in love with? Intelligence. Actually, even more than intelligence, sense of humor.
On what occasions do you lie?
These.
What is the most ridiculous line you've ever written or read?
Ever written? I don't know. I think they're all equally ridiculous, really. I mean, I think you... I don't know. The most ridiculous line I can think of right now is from the movie Avatar.
Okay.
And it's where you discover that the mineral that this whole thing is about, the whole fuss is about, is called, for God's sake, unobtainium. You know, and you have these good actors with a straight face having to say things like, there are massive deposits of unobtainium underneath the Navi village. And at that point I thought, you know, give me a break, unobtainium? You know, you spent tens of millions of dollars making the movie, couldn't you have spent $100 hiring a writer to think of a better name than, you know, what, impossibilium, very hard to get here? You know?
Well, Mr. Cameron is going to be here. I think you can have a word with him about that.
Absolutely. Well, you have to ask him about unobtainium because it's the worst name for anything I've come across for a very long time.
So what would you call it?
Anything else, you know, call it Fred. That's better. That's better than unobtainium.
What is the most meaningful line that you've ever written or heard or read?
Well, you know, there was when I was first writing Midnight's Children, not the finished version, the first line of it was, most of what matters in our lives takes place in our absence. And then I thought that it sounds too much like Tolstoy, you know, it sounds like the opening of Anna Karenina, and I thought this is not a very Tolstoyan novel, so I have to bury it. The line is still there, but it's buried. But in a way that was at the root of that novel, and at the root of many other things that I've done, you know, because it says, what it means is that we are not just shaped by our own choices, we're also shaped by the world in which we are born into and the world in which other people make an impact on our lives. So
And that's almost prophetic for
Well,
what happened in your
I
life, in a
guess, yeah.
sense.
Well, true.
What is your all-time favorite book?
Well, all right. Well, I'm very fond of 100 Years of Solitude. I think it is a great novel, and I think probably in my lifetime is the greatest novel that anyone has written.
What is one book that you wish you had written?
That one.
If I said you could have the Nobel Prize, but you would never have love in your life again, what would you choose?
I'd choose love always. Who cares about prizes? Prizes are just things, you know. And I mean, one of the things I've always tried to feel is that you shouldn't get obsessed by things and gongs and, you know, there's a real life outside that you have to actually live. You can't live for prizes. It's nonsense.
Who is a new Indian writer to watch out for?
Oh, I think there's quite a few young guys right now. I mean, I like Rana Dasgupta, I like Altaf Tyrewala, I like quite a lot of these younger people. I think it's an interesting moment, and as you know, as people are beginning to say, there's now also some very talented young Pakistani writers. So,
Yes.
I mean, Daniel Muinuddin in particular, I think, you know, is very extraordinary. So it's nice to see. It's always nice to see the next generation.
Who are you marrying next?
My children have forbidden me to ever get married again.
What?
They would nail me to the floor, I think, if I tried.
But are you going to defy them?
No, I never always do what people tell me.
Hardly. What is the question you would like to be asked?
Well, I suppose the question you always wanted to be asked is about your next book.
What is your next book?
My next book is actually a sequel, sort of sequel, to Haroon and the Sea of Stories. It's called Luca and the Fire of Life. It's coming out in October. And it's because basically I once again have now a 12-year-old son, and he's been saying for some years, you know, what about me? Where's my book? So I thought that's a reasonable question, you know. And so it's been very exciting. I loved writing Haroon and the Sea of Stories, even though I wrote it at a very difficult time for me. And the response to that book by readers and children and grown-ups has been the most enjoyable I've ever had.
We
you
loved
know?
reading it.
And so to do another one, I mean, I hope that people like it as much.
If you weren't sitting on the couch right now, what would you be doing?
I'd be running around town seeing the friends I've got all over the city, who I've tried to pack in as many of them into the few days I have here.
In the few hours that you have here
Couple
this
of days,
time.
yeah,
well,
yeah.
thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for being a lovely,
Thank
lovely,
you.
lovely, lovely guest.
Thank
But I can't let you go before you sign my books.
Oh, I can do that.
Yes, that one. So I'm having my book signed by the Booker of Booker winners.
There you are.
Thank you,
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks.
Catch me on Twitter at Koel's Couch or write into onthecouch@headlinestoday.in. Koel. On the Couch with Koel.